Welcome to the Time for a Reset podcast, the podcast where I, Paul Frampton, interview senior marketers on the big issues of the day and the thing that they want to see reset with an ever-changing landscape. Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of Time for a Reset. I'm your host, Paul Frampton, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Iris Meijer, who is the Global CMO of Vodafone Business. Iris and I were lucky enough to meet each other at the MadFest conference very recently, and I really thoroughly enjoyed her presentation where she talked about the importance of marketeers leading at the board table, making sure that marketing is very much taking a strategic business-led view. As you know, that's a keen topic for conversation on this podcast. So I'm really thrilled to have Iris here. So hello.
Hello, and thanks, Paul. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And just for context, for people to know, we're actually on the 5th of November today. So not only is it fireworks night, so therefore I'm expecting some fireworks here. It's also the first day of the second lockdown, just so you have some context around where we're having this conversation and what day. So first off, Iris, I'd love to start with the question we start every conversation with, which is, what would you like to personally hit reset on?
Now, Paul, you already mentioned about a topic I'm very, very passionate about. So I would really like to hit a reset button on the way that marketers interact with their colleagues at the board level. And if you heard me during the MadFest, I was quoting then that only 5% of marketers have the confidence that they can influence the direction of the business that they work for. And when you compare this to 55% of the CEOs, it really is quite a shocking difference. But as so well demonstrated this year, I truly believe we have earned our spot at that top table. And with so much data we have now available to us, we are empowered to make strategically informed decisions. And interestingly, our peers on the board actually believe in us more than we do. So I think there's no one else at the board who can really master the balance between the science and the creative talent that goes hand in hand with our profession. And it's so critical. The link between these two factors has never been more in focus than in the past 6 months. So please, it's time to believe in ourselves and really live up to the promise that a modern marketer can deliver.
Wonderful, beautifully articulated. Thank you for that. So a couple of questions that come out from that. One is, I mean, clearly it's your passion, marketing, and making sure that marketing leads is important. But why is this topic so important to you? Why are you personally so vocal about it?
Now, Paul, indeed, I am very passionate about this, and I've always been passionate about marketing's role in the success of a company. But then what happened last year, I found myself in way too many discussions with my peers that were actually centered around the challenges marketing has to get their voice heard.
Yeah.
Even suggesting that we should not try to find a link between marketing activities and company revenues. That is just too difficult. And there I was surrounded by these clever, incredibly talented go-getters. And I was wondering, what is going on? Why? So I thought, if there's anything I can do to promote these amazing marketeers, I will be there. Bring it on.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, look, I mean, I hope that actually we're going to see more of that. I think there were quite a few good examples at MadFest, actually. Chris from Specsavers, who was on a few weeks ago, he very similarly was banging that drum, as was Christoph from Moonpig, and saying that, as you've beautifully put it, now is the time for the marketeer to shine. But you mentioned something that I guess will be a barrier, in that quite often some of the marketeers around the board table aren't as confident as the other C-level folks that have confidence in them. So what do you think is driving that?
Now, I actually believe that now than ever before, marketing has that right place. And if you consider what has happened this year, firstly, we are definitely best placed to help deliver customer insight. And this year, our insights have allowed us to understand better how customer needs have shifted and how best to target offers based on this. And then secondly, we all know the original goals and strategies that we draw up at the start of the year, they had to be completely rewritten. So marketing has been really critical to supporting the business in meeting these new goals. And thirdly, also, businesses are having to revisit purpose and how they communicate with their customers. And marketing sits at the heart of getting this right. So I think these shifts have actually brought about an opportunity for CMOs to make a real difference and really actually go after having the right seat at the board table. So if you think about, as I mentioned, our peers on the board already look to us, and especially during this year, to really draw upon our customer knowledge and really getting the commercial response right in time of crisis. So I actually believe that marketeers should really look to and have the confidence in their existing strengths, go for it. But what they should also do is to look to develop a little bit more on the commercial acumen, because that will help to break out of being seen just as a support function. It's absolutely vital to have the commercial acumen. And we have more data than ever before to really pack up our choices as well.
Absolutely. And that point about being able to tie it back to commercial, a commercial narrative has been made quite a few times by other CMO guests on the podcast. And it's so important. And as you said earlier, right? I mean, I think everybody probably beats themselves up about the fact that you can't get to 100% perfection in attributing kind of marketing or media, but there are very few things that we can get to a perfect world in. So maybe some marketers maybe hold themselves slightly, that they hold a bar too high versus actually just making sure that
I think you're right, absolutely.
So Iris, you talked about I mean, and it's impossible to avoid the situation we're in and that we've been in for quite some time, and the fact that has actually created more of a spotlight on marketing and created an opportunity around what's happening in the market, how are customers changing, where are those insights coming through from data and analytics. But the other angle that some might say is that things like HR have probably been thrust really into the spotlight as a result of thinking about remote working and different types of contracts, and I suppose ops, because of the need to suddenly shift to a different way of delivering to customers, have definitely been put into the front seat. So what is it that you have seen change dramatically from a marketeer seat, from a global CMO's perspective? I mean, you look over, I guess, what Vodafone Business does across the world. What things have you done differently in the last 6 months that maybe you weren't doing before?
No, that's really interesting question. Let me first address the topic on the HR and ops, because I think we should never, ever indeed underestimate the importance of HR and ops, especially during crises like this. Yeah. And I'm absolutely in awe of my HR colleagues and their relentless focus on our employees' well-being and safety. But interestingly, if you mentioned remote working, so actually what we have been doing, and one thing that where we've become much more strategic, is we've used the customer data we have, we've analyzed the data, and it's really made us help shape actually for our business a remote working proposition, but work together with HR. Brilliant. So we have been working together with HR and really analyzing the data of our own people and how they work remotely from home, and using that data also to advise our customers. Considering Vodafone, we have call centers, we have retail, and all those almost overnight had to adjust to a new reality. So we have wealth of understanding and information ourselves as well. So what we've been doing from a marketing perspective is use that to actually advise our global customers and how to actually go about remote working, what's the response for call centers, how to shift retail to digital. So that's what we've been doing. And also what we have very much focused this year is use all the data we have about customers' needs and behaviors, and especially changing behaviors this year, to really think about propositions from the customer perspective, rather than just kind of like these products, ready-made products, and then trying to sell them. So this shift has definitely made sure that marketing has become even more strategic within our company.
I love the example of the partnership with HR and actually taking the learnings that you've got in your own business to apply them in a human level externally. It's such a simple thing, but probably not one that many people have actually implemented. Do you, when it comes to the B2B space, do you see B2B marketing taking more of a leaf out of the B2C world? I mean, I think too often we have a habit of siloing and separating things, and they're not that radically different, but there are obviously differences in terms of sometimes the communication. Do you feel that B2B is these days very similar and more human, needs to be more human, that you've touched on that a little bit, or is it a very different way of thinking about marketing from B2C?
Oh, Paul, you touched upon a very topic that I'm also passionate about.
Oh, good. And we didn't even talk about it.
I actually, I read this report. It's a research from CEP. I think they're part of Gartner now. It's already a couple of years old. And what they actually did is they kind of like looked at the emotional connection consumers have with brands and businesses. So what is the kind of like emotional connection between B2C and B2B? And what they found out is actually B2B customers are much more emotionally connected to the brands. So these hearts and minds, this creativity is actually, if not equally important, even more important in the B2B world. And I am such a big believer. I touched upon earlier about this arts and science. And we have become so data driven, which is fantastic. And I talk about data, but we should never, ever forget the creativity and really creating the emotional connection with our customers and understanding their needs. And I think, to your point, B2C and B2B have become closer and closer in that sense. And I am so happy, because B2B should not be just, product-led, no marketing needed, technology jargon. Absolutely not.
No, makes total sense. Probably, like many things, it's the way that the industry has kind of separated and siloed rather than the reality. Because I think it's very evident that the organizations that are using data and insight to understand the real challenges and problems that their customers are experiencing, and then helps to solve them, a bit like you talked about with the remote work piece, it's very evident that as an emotional kind of connection and a provision of value at a time when value is needed is going to work in the B2B space. Yet you're right, there are very few examples of kind of emotion and creative being talked about within B2B generally. And you touched on the data and technology space. I always like to come back to that and how that's changing the marketing function. I guess in the B2B space, there's, over the last few years, there's been a huge new onslaught of marketing technology to help automation, whether it's account-based management or kind of thinking about how to follow through an MQL and an SQL. How do you get that right balance between science and art? Because I think it seems that you're a believer that it's a balance, but you're also a proponent of we need more science. So how do you encourage your teams to get that right balance? Because I think we all know that marketing can sometimes be overly creative and awards led, and perhaps sometimes be overly focused just on the numbers and not on the emotion. So how do you get the balance right?
Well, I think it's every day you need to focus on getting the balance right. So I can't say we always get the balance right. If I think about one way to actually really ensure you get the balance right is what we have done is we've really changed the way we work with our product. So we are now in marketing able to tell product development organization what our customers are actually looking for, as I mentioned earlier, rather than just launching something that's already ready baked. And of course, here, data and insight is absolutely critical. So analytics and market research, you need that, and you need those to be connected to the business and really help drive the strategy and product development. So from that perspective, yes, data is important. But one key thing what I mentioned here is that we start from the customer. So what the customers are looking for. So when you start from the customer and you're really customer centric, you naturally also focus on more on the emotions and the creativity. You can't just focus on the data. So it is about the customers, their needs, their behaviors, they worry. So we've been so focused this year, for example, on our smaller customers, because they're most hit by COVID. And there's a lot of things that keeps them up at night, and we need to be there for them. So I think that kind of like naturally forces way to the creativity. And what's really, really important is for us not to forget to be curious and always be open to new ideas and challenging how we have done things before. And I think it partly comes from data, but it really partly comes from this marketing creativity, that we are curious, we try things, we learn. I think it comes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like that, Edith. And so there are two different questions that come out of that. I'll go with the first one first. So how do you think about context and targeting when it comes to what you just shared? So I guess what I mean by that is clearly the people that you're serving have other lives, particularly right now. Our work lives are all kind of integrated on top of each other. And obviously, sometimes we'll try to talk to a CEO or a chief digital officer or transformation officer in a very contextually relevant environment where they're reading about transformation. But these people obviously also kind of engage with lots of other things that they're passion points. So where do you stand on whether you build relationships and emotional connections in those spaces that may be more personal versus always being in a business environment?
I think you need to strike a balance there as well. But I think this year has been a very good reminder for us as well. Is like, when is the right time to communicate and what is the right message? So what we did during the first lockdown, for example, is we stopped overly kind of like salesy campaigns completely. So we did, I mean, people had way too much other more important things in their mind. So we did that. And what we then slowly, when we started to communicate, we were actually communicating more about how can we be in this together, and together we can. So how can we together support each other? I explained about the remote working, the advice. How can we help our customers? And what we did, for example, this summer is we launched for our smaller customers a VHub, a digital advisory service. It's a free advisory service for them, from ranging topics, considering, for example, they are struggling to find new customers now. Many don't have even a website, don't know how to do digital marketing, e-commerce, security is an issue. So really helping them there. So I think that's kind of like what we've done. But also to your question about the medium in a way, what we have actually find we've been most successful, for example, when it comes to this digital advisory service, when we've been promoting it on social media that people use when it's more for their personal use rather than business.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And again, it makes sense, right? I mean, we as consumers or customers, whatever you want to call us, we don't stop and think, right, I'm now putting myself, particularly when you own a business.
I
You
know,
don't.
right? It's
I'm in my,
24/7. Yeah.
exactly. And you, unfortunately, we've all got these things on our mind all the time. So, no, I think that sounds like a smart approach. And you were also talking about, I guess, experimentation and curiosity and using data to refine strategy. So that brings us neatly around to my next question, which is about agility, a much oft used word at the moment when it comes to marketing. I'd love if you could just tell us how you see agility when you think about it from a marketing perspective.
Well, I think agility and being agile is important, but from my perspective, the reason for doing is not to execute on a specific methodology, but to get it from it what you need as a business. So, and I learned this from an agile coach a couple of years back, and it's been such a valuable advice. You really have to focus on what makes sense for your business objective, rather than what is exactly set in a certain agile methodology or another. What agile does bring, and I think it's been fantastic, is for ability to learn fast and be comfortable with adapting when things go wrong. So I really, really like that one. And now at Vodafone, we do use agile, especially in digital marketing and CVM campaigns, where you really need this continuous improvement, but it's also a very useful approach in general in marketing, I think, especially if you need kind of like specific attention across functions to a project that needs it for a limited period of time.
Yeah, got it. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like the methodology is a very good one to drive the right types of behavior. And of course, on the right projects, it's almost essential, but don't see it as a straitjacket where you have to do daily stand-ups every day, or you have to have every aspect of it. It's more about adopting what works for your company.
Absolutely, absolutely. You said it much better than me.
I had the fortune of listening to you first, so but I think that's a good message for people, because I talk to a lot of senior marketeers at the moment, some of whom are very comfortable with it, and others who are trying to implement it. And I think sometimes it can be quite a scary thing, because the language is so radically different to what we're used to, because it's built for software. So I agree with you. It's more about how you bring that test and refine, fail faster, be analytical, that kind of mindset into marketing, which we all appreciate, rather than this, I'm going to run a campaign, the campaign's running, and then I'll stop and I'll review it and then I'll start again. I mean, that world is long gone, I think, isn't it?
Yes, and exactly. And that's why it can be really, really daunting. And that's why talking to this agile coach a couple of years back, I was just like, wow, yes, of course. It's really just having this mentality. And marketeers, you referred to it earlier as well. We sometimes tend to be too perfectionists. And this is a new world. So what we need to introduce more is this just like learning and being more curious and just trying new things.
Yes, I agree with you. I think otherwise the formula, everyone follows the same formula. And I think we all know that creativity and great strategy means that you have to take some risks and be brave, but it doesn't always work first time.
No, correct.
So as we move towards the close, there are a couple of final questions I'd love to ask you. The first one is, it's clear to me that you're a great voice for marketing as a transformation driver, as a growth driver, and as a strategic force within Vodafone. And it sounds like Vodafone very much values that and doesn't see marketing as a support function. But I'm sure you know lots of marketeers who work in organizations where maybe they haven't got quite such an open-minded board, or maybe they just don't know how to get the buy-in. What advice would you give to those folks listening about how they make sure that marketing is seen as this kind of fundamental board driving strategic force?
I think before giving my advice, it's probably good for me to say that yes, Vodafone is very much appreciating marketing, but actually it's been a journey, and I hate the word journey, but it's definitely been a journey. So it hasn't always been like that. So I joined 2.5 years ago, and we in Vodafone Business, we actually didn't have a proper marketing function then. So that was the starting point.
Oh, wow.
And today, marketing is leading one of the 3 key strategic pillars at Vodafone Business. So it really shows the trust that we have earned at board level. But it wasn't like that just over 2.5 years ago. So what I would say is be confident. That is my advice. You can do it.
Great. I love that. It's a simple but very profound message. And finally, I'm sure people listening to this think, well, Iris has got it all together. She's very articulate. She's pushed in 2 years for marketing to lead one of the 3 strategic pillars. She gets everything right. She must know everything. I'm not like that. So I'd love you to kind of just reflect on yourself personally, and maybe kind of share something that you're doing differently to elevate marketing even further to the place that you want it to be.
I think one thing that's actually the COVID situation, the pandemic has made me reflect quite a lot in general. And I think what I realized is how important, well, I realized again how important communication is. And we all know, as marketeers, it's our job to preach to people the importance of communication. But I think I've really realized it this year, and especially when it comes to keeping my own team informed and being very active in communicating with them. So I think it's not going to be easy a couple of months, even more for us. Now, as you mentioned, we are on the 2nd lockdown here in the UK. So I personally commit to taking care of my team, continuing taking care of my team, and then ensuring that we keep delivering on the promise and really taking the learnings from this past year and keep better highlighting the role that marketing has played to help the business adapt and grow.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Iris. I think you have taken us on a great journey. I know you don't like that word, but you've taken us on a journey from why you're so passionate about the role of marketing at the board table and the role of the CMO. And I think you've given some really great examples and practical examples of things to think about. So I'm really appreciative of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Time for a Reset. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. We'll be back talking to a senior marketeer very soon. Make sure you don't miss out on any new episodes by subscribing on Apple, Spotify or SoundCloud, and leave us a review at timeforareset.co.uk.